For the longest time, I thought I was one of the lucky ones. I had a husband who came home every evening, kissed me on the forehead, asked about dinner, and played with our daughter before bedtime. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had routines, traditions, quiet laughter. To the world, and to myself, it looked like love. But now I know routine can be the prettiest disguise for loneliness. It started small, too small to notice, really. He began working out again after years of saying he had no time. I was proud at first. He said he wanted to feel better about himself, lose a bit of weight. He bought new shirts, started wearing cologne again, and got a fresh haircut every 2 weeks. He even started checking his reflection before leaving for work. I told myself it was harmless, that maybe, after 10 years of marriage, he just wanted to feel young again. But then came the phone. He used to leave it on the kitchen counter, always charging, always within reach. Lately, it followed him everywhere, even to the bathroom. When it buzzed, he'd turn it face down. When I asked who it was, he'd shrug.
Work, he said.
Always work. I believed him. Because that's what good wives do, right? They trust. They give the benefit of the doubt. They protect the image of their family, even from the cracks forming beneath it. One night, after dinner, he was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I was folding laundry, half watching a show. I glanced up and saw him smiling, not the casual, distracted smile of someone reading news or memes. It was softer, warmer, the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. I asked, "What's so funny?" He looked up too quickly. "Nothing," he said. "Just a work thing." But when he got up to pour himself a drink, he took the phone with him. Something in me tightened. For days, I fought the urge to check his phone. I told myself I wasn't that kind of wife. That snooping was beneath me. That if I looked, I'd find something I couldn't unsee, and I wasn't ready to face that. But curiosity isn't always about mistrust. Sometimes it's survival instinct. It happened on a Wednesday. He was in the shower, humming. His phone was on the bed, screen lighting up with a new notification. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The message read, "I miss you already." My heart stopped. My vision blurred. I opened the chat. There were hearts, inside jokes,
Plans.
photos, months' worth of conversations that told a story I wasn't a part of. Her name was Tina. They worked together. She was younger, by how much I didn't even want to know. I saw messages about secret lunches, about how she understood him, about how he wished things were different. And right there, in my own home, I realized my husband had been living another life, one that didn't include me. He came out of the shower, towel around his waist, humming. The sight of him made my stomach turn. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone at his face, to make him feel the same burn I felt spreading through my chest. But I couldn't move. I just stood there, holding his phone like a ticking bomb. He froze when he saw my expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, though his eyes already knew. I held out the phone. "You tell me." For a second, he didn't even flinch. Then he exhaled, like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. "It's not what you think," he said, voice calm, practiced. "She's just a friend. I was going through a rough time. You've been distant lately." The words hit me like slaps. You've been distant. Classic. Turn the knife. Twist the blame. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that didn't feel like mine. "Don't you dare make me your excuse," I said. "Don't you dare make me your reason for betraying me." He said nothing. Just stood there, silent, dripping water onto the carpet, unable to look me in the eye. That silence said everything. That night, I slept on the couch. The next morning, he went to work like nothing happened. No apology. No explanation. Just a heavy quiet that filled every corner of the house. I spent that day moving like a ghost. Feeding our daughter. Washing dishes. Pretending the world hadn't just fallen apart. When night came again, I sat in the dark and scrolled through their messages over and over until I felt numb. There was no big fight. No dramatic ending. Just emptiness. Days turned into weeks. We spoke only when necessary. He swore it was over, that it didn't mean anything, that he was confused. But the words felt like ashes. Empty, tasteless. Something in me had cracked too deeply to be repaired with promises. And yet, I couldn't walk away. Not yet. I had no income, no plan, no family nearby. I had a child to protect. So I stayed, not out of love, but survival. But I didn't know then that the woman I was becoming, the one sitting silently at that kitchen table, staring at her reflection in the dark window, was already rising. Betrayal didn't kill me. It woke me up. Because when someone shatters the life you built around them, you start building something else, something stronger, something unbreakable, around yourself. I don't remember the exact day when I stopped crying. Only that, for a while, it felt like the tears would never end. Every morning, I woke up before dawn, not because I wanted to, but because my body couldn't rest. My heart would start racing the second my eyes opened, as if reminding me, yes, it's still true.
He betrayed you.
It wasn't a dream. I'd go to the kitchen, make coffee, stare out the window at the empty street, and wonder how my life had come to this. 10 years of marriage reduced to silence and tension that could be cut with a knife. He still came home every night, ate dinner, scrolled through his phone, slept on his side of the bed. We were two strangers performing the ghost of a marriage. Our daughter didn't understand. She asked why Daddy didn't smile anymore. I told her he was just tired, that we both were. But inside me, something was dying, and something else was quietly being born. The collapse came in waves. Some days I functioned almost normally, cooking, cleaning, pretending. Then, without warning, a wave of grief would hit so hard I'd drop whatever I was holding. I remember once, standing in the shower, suddenly realizing I was washing the same body he had touched, and she had too. I scrubbed my skin until it burned. That night, I deleted every picture of us together. Then I retrieved them all from the trash folder the next morning. I was still too afraid to let go of the version of my life I had loved. He acted like nothing had happened. When I tried to talk, he sighed, avoided eye contact, said I was dwelling on it. When I stayed quiet, he accused me of being cold. It's strange how the person who breaks you can still find ways to make you feel guilty for the cracks. For a while, I blamed myself. I replayed every memory, looking for where I might have gone wrong. Did I stop dressing up? Did I nag too much? Did I make him feel unseen? The questions became knives I used against myself. But then one evening, as I sat in the car after grocery shopping, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were swollen, my hair tied in a messy bun, and I looked small. Not ugly, not old, just erased. I realized I had been living as a shadow in my own story. That night, when he came home late again and muttered something about work, I didn't ask where he'd been. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just looked at him, really looked, and saw not a husband, but a man who didn't deserve the pieces of me he had destroyed. The next morning something changed. I woke up, made coffee as usual, and instead of scrolling through my phone, I opened my laptop. It wasn't a grand plan, just a need to do something. I searched for part-time jobs, for home-based work, anything to make my own money. The options were few. I hadn't worked since our daughter was born. My resume felt like a time capsule from another life. I closed the laptop, defeated, and went to the kitchen. On the counter sat a half-finished cake. I'd baked it the day before for no reason, just to distract myself. I cut a piece, tasted it, and for the first time in weeks, something felt good. That evening, when my friend Julia called, I mentioned the cake. She laughed and said, "You could sell those. You bake better than the stores." I laughed too, but something inside me sparked, quiet, almost shy, but real. I started baking every day. At first, it was therapy, the rhythm of mixing, the scent of vanilla, the hum of the oven. It filled the silence in my chest. Then, one day, I posted a picture of a chocolate cake on social media. A neighbor messaged me, "Do you sell them?" Without thinking, I replied, "Yes." She ordered one for her son's birthday. Then her cousin called. Then her coworker. By the end of the month, I had baked 12 cakes and earned enough to buy my daughter a new backpack. It wasn't about the money. It was about feeling capable again. Each time I sold a cake, it felt like I was reclaiming a little part of myself, the part that had been quiet for years. Meanwhile, my husband watched from the sidelines. He didn't congratulate me, didn't ask how it was going. He just looked confused, as if he didn't recognize the woman who no longer asked him for anything. One night, he said, "You've changed." I looked at him, calm, and said, "Yes, I had to." He didn't answer, but I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Fear, maybe. Or regret. I no longer cared which. Still, some nights were hard. There were moments when loneliness hit like a cold wind, when I'd see couples holding hands or families laughing in cafes, and I'd feel that sting of loss again. But even in those moments, I reminded myself, I didn't lose a husband. I lost an illusion. And illusions are meant to fade. The collapse was messy, painful, exhausting, but it was also cleansing. Because sometimes, before you can rebuild your life, you have to let it burn to the ground. I was still standing in the ashes, yes. But my hands were finally free. The first time I delivered a cake to a stranger's house, my hands were trembling. It wasn't the weight of the box. It was the fear of being seen again, of stepping into a world that had moved on without me. But when the woman opened the door, smiled, and said, "This looks beautiful," something in me thawed. For the first time in months, I smiled back and meant it. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and wrote 3 words across the first page. My own name. It was time to stop living behind his. Days began to fill with purpose again. My mornings started not with tears, but with flour and butter. I'd wake before dawn, preheat the oven, measure ingredients while my daughter still slept. The smell of vanilla became my alarm clock, my therapy, my silent prayer. I began experimenting with new recipes: pistachio cakes, lemon tarts, berry cheesecakes. I wasn't just baking, I was healing. Each dessert was a piece of art stitched together with patience and quiet joy. Soon orders started coming faster than I could handle alone. A local cafe reached out after seeing my photos online.
They wanted me to supply desserts for weekends.
I almost cried reading their message. That night, I told my daughter, "Mommy has her own business now." She clapped her little hands and said, "Then we don't need Daddy's money." Her innocence hurt, but it also reminded me of why I had to keep going. The house began to change, too. I repainted the kitchen, pale yellow, like sunlight. I took down the wedding photos and replaced them with my daughter's drawings. I donated the clothes I used to wear for him, the ones he said looked too serious or not sexy enough. Every change was small, but together, they rewrote the story of my home. One day, I stood in the mirror, hair shorter, apron dusted with flour, cheeks flushed from work, and realized I looked alive again. Not perfect, not polished, just real. He noticed, of course. At first, he stayed quiet, observing. Then came the questions, soft, probing. "How's your little business going?" he'd ask. "Good," I'd reply, without looking up. The distance between us had changed. It was no longer heavy, it was freeing. He could feel it too. One evening, after putting our daughter to bed, I found him standing in the kitchen doorway. "You're different," he said. "Stronger." I smiled faintly. "You just never looked close enough before." He tried to laugh, but his eyes betrayed him. The power had shifted, and we both knew it. Months passed. My business grew. I got my first logo, a small online shop, and a loyal base of customers. I learned how to price my work, market it, handle orders, and say no when I was overbooked. With each new skill, I realized how much I'd underestimated myself. For years, I thought my husband's stability was what kept our world intact. But I had been the quiet backbone, the one who made things work, who soothed, who built comfort out of chaos. Now, I was building for myself. One morning, while delivering to a cafe, I saw him across the street, walking with his coworker, the same woman from those messages. They weren't holding hands, but the air between them said enough. For a moment, my stomach turned. But then I caught my reflection in the window, flower on my sleeve, hair pinned up, delivery bag in hand, and I didn't feel broken. I felt untouchable. They looked like two people still searching for something to fill the space where truth should have been. I already had mine. That night, I came home, baked a new recipe, strawberry cream cupcakes with white chocolate drizzle, and as I watched them rise in the oven, I realized how far I'd come. The woman who once stood paralyzed in heartbreak was gone. In her place stood someone reborn from the ruins. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even victory. It was peace. And peace, I learned, is the loudest statement a woman can make. By the end of the year, I registered my business officially. Aurora's Cakes, after my daughter. The name meant dawn, because that's what it was, a new beginning. When the first tax form came in my name alone, I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. I took a picture of it and sent it to Julia, my friend who'd first encouraged me. She replied, "Look at you, boss lady. Who needs a man when you've got purpose?" She was joking, but she wasn't wrong. He came home late one evening, again. Except this time, I wasn't waiting. He walked into the kitchen and paused when he saw the boxes stacked on the counter. "Another order?" he asked. "3," I said, tying a ribbon on the last one. He stood there for a moment, watching me. "You really don't need me anymore, do you?" I looked up, met his eyes, and said softly, "I never did. I just didn't know it." He moved out 2 weeks later. No shouting, no final fight, just quiet understanding that our story had already ended long ago. And as I watched him carry his suitcase down the hallway, I didn't feel loss. I felt light. Because the truth is, my husband's affair didn't destroy my life. It freed me from one I was never meant to stay in. A full year passed before I saw him again. By then, my life no longer revolved around his absence. Mornings were loud with laughter and the clatter of mixing bowls. My phone buzzed with orders. My daughter had learned how to crack eggs without spilling half the shell inside, and every evening we shared tea and a slice of something new, lemon drizzle, chocolate mousse, almond cake. The house no longer echoed with silence. It breathed. It lived. So when his message arrived, "Can we talk?" my heart didn't sink. It simply paused. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "About what?" His answer came quickly. "Us." We met at the same cafe, where my cakes were now sold. I chose it deliberately, neutral ground, but still mine. I arrived early, sat by the window, and watched the street hum with life. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked smaller somehow, thinner, like someone who hadn't been sleeping well. His shirt was wrinkled, his face tired. For a fleeting second, I remembered the man I'd once loved, the way his laughter used to fill a room, the warmth of his hand on my back. But the memory felt like a scene from someone else's story. He smiled nervously and sat down. "You look good," he said. "Thank you," I replied. "You look different." He glanced down at his coffee.
Yeah.
"Life's been complicated." We talked, politely like old classmates catching up. He asked about our daughter, my business, the house. I told him everything was fine. Better than fine. Then came the question I knew was coming. "Do you ever think we could start over?" I looked at him, calm. He wasn't arrogant now, not defensive, not cruel. Just lost. The kind of loss that happens when a man realizes the world moved on without him. I took a slow breath. "You know, for a long time I prayed for this moment," I said. "For you to come back. For you to regret what you did. I used to imagine what I'd say, how I'd make you understand how much you hurt me." He leaned in, eyes hopeful. "And now," I said softly, "I don't need you to understand anything." He blinked, unsure how to respond. "You see," I continued, "your affair, it broke me, but it also rebuilt me. Everything I am now came from the ashes of what you destroyed. I don't hate you for that. I even thank you."
He frowned.
"Thank me?" "Yes," I said. "Because losing you forced me to find myself." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he nodded slowly, like someone finally grasping a truth they wish they'd never ignored. "I really messed up," he said quietly. "Yes," I said. "You did." And that was it. No anger. No tears. Just truth. Clean and heavy enough to end the conversation. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, people walked by, holding hands, sipping coffee, laughing. The world kept spinning, utterly indifferent to the little tragedies happening inside the cafe. Finally, I stood up. I have to go. I have a delivery. He looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw what I once mistook for strength, the fragility of a man who never thought the woman he betrayed would stand taller than him one day. "Do you think we could ever be friends?" he asked. I smiled, not cruelly but kindly. "We already are. We just don't talk anymore." When I left the cafe, the air outside felt lighter. I walked slowly, carrying a small box of cupcakes for my next customer, and realized I was smiling. Not the forced kind, not the "I'm fine" mask, but a real one, soft and steady. It was the smile of a woman who had outgrown her pain. That evening, I sat on the balcony with my daughter. The sky was painted in rose and gold. She asked, "Mom, did you see Daddy?" I nodded. "Yes." "Is he coming back?" I brushed a strand of hair from her face and said, "No, sweetheart. But that's okay. Some people belong to our past, so we can become who we're meant to be." She thought for a moment and said, "Then I'm glad he's in the past." I laughed, really laughed. She didn't know it, but she had just given me the perfect ending. Later, when she fell asleep, I opened my notebook again, the same one where I'd once written my own name. I turned to a new page and wrote, "He didn't save me. His betrayal did." Because sometimes life doesn't give you heroes. It gives you lessons, and if you're brave enough to learn them, they turn into wings. A week later, I got an email from a local women's center asking if I'd host a small workshop for women starting over, teaching baking as therapy. I said yes, without hesitation. Standing there that Saturday morning, surrounded by women who had lost things too, husbands, homes, faith, I realized something profound. Pain isn't what defines us. It's what refines us. And as I looked around at those women kneading dough, laughing, sharing stories, I thought back to the version of me who once sat in the dark, crying over a man who'd stopped seeing her. I wanted to reach through time and whisper to her, "One day, you'll thank him for leaving. Because he didn't walk away from your life, he walked out of your way." That was the day I finally forgave him, not for his sake, but for mine. And that's how the story truly ends. Not with revenge, not with sorrow, but with peace, warm as sunlight, soft as vanilla, and strong enough to last a lifetime.